So today's topic is about symptoms, about diagnosis, and why you should not actually be waiting for symptoms before you start taking care of your health, why you should not wait for certainly for a diagnosis to occur before you do something about long-term health creation, right? So that's what today's topic is all about. Because at the end of the day, this is what a typical modern lifestyle looks like. It consists of a nutrient-poor diet, high stress levels, low sleep, right? These are something that I think many of us are sort of dealing with. Of course, we may not be having a lot of junk food, but by and large, what's happened is the nutrient quality, the nutrient levels in the soil has become depleted to a large extent. So we are not getting enough nutrients from the soil. So whether we are having a healthy diet or not, that might be an issue. It might also be that our gut is in poor shape. So our digestion, absorption, transportation of the nutrients is not taking place adequately. And we can't make nutrients out of thin air. And that actually leads to a disease dynamic. So that's where the nutrient poor diet comes in. And of course, the last thing can be that we are not having enough vegetables, enough fruits, and not obviously getting enough of the nutrients. High stress levels impair almost every function in our body. So high stress levels are a huge factor in a modern lifestyle. I'm not going to get into all of these, in today's session. Today's session is about sort of, on the symptoms and the diagnosis and what we should be aware of. But just taking you through some of these modern lifestyle elements, right, which are a reality for, I think, all of us or most of us. So high stress levels, and again, it can be physiological stress from, toxins, from infections, but it can also be psychological stress from our worries and a presentation coming up, or schooling for children. I know that I'm sort of grappling with that as of now, online schooling. So all of that, right? Low sleep. So it can be that we are not really prioritizing sleep. So obviously we're not getting enough sleep. Sleep is an extremely critical function and one of the main contributors to good health. But it might also be that we are not able to get good quality sleep because our thoughts are swirling around in our head all the time. So it can be for different reasons. Of course, it can be numbing recreation, right? We do not really understand that looking at a television screen just to sort of unwind at the end of the day is not really a relaxation for your body or your brain, right? Or your eyes for that matter. It might be something that we think is relaxing for us. And of course, it helps to numb our emotions to, if you are constantly flipping channels, etc., just to not think about maybe uncomfortable thoughts or the problems in our life, and we sort of try to escape from that by numbing ourselves down, which is why it's called numbing recreation, not active recreation. Active recreation examples would be like if you enjoy painting, doing some art activity, craft, something that is more creative, right? Something that you are involved in, but at the same time relaxes you. For me, it is reading or listening to music. So it will be different things for different people. And of course, unprecedented exposure to toxins is a huge issue. And I'll probably address it in one of the other group coaching sessions. And it creates a huge, sort of array of issues leading to a disease diagnosis later down the line. And growing risk of infections, right? Whether it's COVID, whether it's, and even pre-COVID, this has been there. Because long-term antibiotic use has, made many of the, bacteria drug resistance. It might be poor immune health, and we will actually go through some of the key contributors to poor immune regulation or immune dysregulation. So these are all what we are dealing with as in terms of modern lifestyle. And this slide I wanted to show you because I think this sort of puts together maybe a dismal picture, but a real picture of what we are dealing with. So we need to appreciate what reality is, what our world looks like. And at the same time, then, only with this increased awareness, we can sort of figure out a way to move forward to deal with the amount of huge exposure of toxins in our body. and maybe then take steps to mitigate that, right? So, but if you're not aware of all the ways that environment, and I'm talking about the immediate environment, I'm talking about your city, I'm talking about the room that you're in. So, and the world at large, that we're grappling with, then it's not possible to deal with it, right? But I think most of us are aware of this, but it may not be really real to some of us. It's like an elephant in the room. We know about it, but we don't really appreciate the impact that it has on our health. So this is why, this will give you an idea. So whether it's the air pollution, whether it's the uh, the wireless signals, whether it's the personal care products that you're using, whether it's the medications that you're taking or the foods that you're having, even a lot of the toothpaste, the pesticides, right? So all of these cumulatively, maybe one thing at a time is not such a big deal, but when it's a cumulative effect, and it is a cumulative effect for all of us, that's where these problems crop up in the long run. And of course, the other thing I mentioned earlier, but again, I think visual makes it so much easier. And of course, if you're watching this on replay, make sure that you drop in your questions inside of the Facebook group. If you're listening to this on audio, again, head over to our Facebook group. If you're not part of it already, it's called Healing from Within with Anindita, and make sure that you, come to the post, and then you can drop in your comments or ask your questions. So all these are stressors, whether, as I said, whether it's psychological stressors, whether it's a food that we are having, because if it's a nutrient poor food, if it's a junk filled food, then it's also full of preservatives and chemicals, additives and food colorings, which are alien to our immune system, which is actually one of the primary reasons why which is at the heart of immune dysregulation for many adults and in fact many children. And of course, over exercising, medications, these are all different kinds of stressors, high insulin levels because of the, huge amount of maybe sugar or the refined carbohydrates that we are consuming, high stress levels, which raises, so I'm not going to get into that part, but just to give you an overview of what the modern lifestyle is sort of looks like for most of us, for the majority of us. And the question that I want to ask you is this: do you think you wake up one morning with a disease diagnosis? Of course not, right? Disease diagnosis does not happen overnight. You simply do not wake up one day and find out that you have diabetes, or you have a heart condition, a disease, or you have an autoimmune condition for that matter, right? So disease diagnosis doesn't happen overnight for any kind of chronic conditions. And I'm going to share with you example of autoimmune conditions specifically, because I think that will sort of drive home the point. And this is something that, I want to share a story here because, what made me, come onto this path of health coaching was my daughter's severe eczema. And this, the only symptom that she had were, a bit of dry skin when she was about 1 year old. And then we took off her, the cow's milk that we were giving her at that time, and her sort of her symptoms went away. And there were no other symptoms for several years till she was about 6.5. So, and she certainly never, had never had digestive symptoms, right? So it's not true that just because we have something related to the gut, and in her case it certainly was, that you will get some digestive symptom that may or may not happen. And there were no GI symptoms, so gastrointestinal symptoms at all, till she reached about 6.5 years of age, and then her skin condition just went downhill. It deteriorated so sharply that even the doctors could not sort of bring it under control. And the only thing that sort of helped her was to put her on oral steroids and immunosuppressive medication, which she was for about 5 years at that time. And it was only by working on her gut health, addressing her gut health, addressing her, I'm not going to be addressing that today, but it was only by changing the lifestyle, changing our food habits, changing her diet in particular, going off gluten, going off dairy, etc. for many years, that brought her eczema under control and took her off all medication. So it's not true that you might see many symptoms, and it's certainly not true that you have to wait for that, because what happens is that disease often begins in the gut, right? It's true for many health issues. This is just to give you a very good example of how it would sort of begin. Initially, we start with deficiency-driven dysfunction. So it's because your body is lacking certain nutrients that you start, and even before that, you may or may not see any symptoms for in any of these. So it may be that this is going on underneath, and you may not be seeing some of the symptoms, right? Like in my daughter's case, she never had constipation, she never had belching, she never had bloating, etc. So it doesn't hold true for, but this is how usually disease progression begins once symptoms start to develop. So deficiency-driven dysfunction can be, those little bit of cold and, a bit of headache and a bit of sniffles, and then which can actually lead to anemia maybe, or depression, so, and even then it might be the symptoms can be so minimal that we sort of tend to ignore. And this is a problem not only with autoimmune but other conditions, but I'm just going to stick to autoimmune diseases, because the spectrum of autoimmunity is a progressive state of disease. So it has vibrant health at the one end and degenerative disease on the other hand. And it doesn't matter with autoimmune disease we are talking about, which diagnosis I'm talking about. So, and in between lies a range of varied but related stages that build on each other. So at any time, you're moving either towards vibrant health or you're moving away from vibrant health. And this is how we suffer from autoimmune damage far before we get a disease diagnosis. And it's also true for other health conditions. So again, coming back to the slide, gastrointestinal disease, so deficiency can eventually lead to gastrointestinal disease, where actually there is a disease, dynamic, which is a constipation, belching, and bloating. So then you start seeing a bit of, bit more symptoms. Then, of course, it can lead to, when this has been going long enough, it can lead to gut, inflammation stemming from the gut, which again manifests in different kinds of symptoms and diseases, which is asthma, migraine, fatigue, eczema, which was in my daughter's case. So sort of this is where her disease got diagnosed, right? We actually didn't we were not aware of what to look out for before we reached this stage, right? And this happens for many, many people. And then finally you end up with maybe an autoimmune disease, whether it's Hashimoto's, lupus, multiple sclerosis. So what does that tell us? That this in-between area, like this in between the vibrant health and the degenerative spectrum, if you can understand this, then you can consciously shift away from, the degenerative, away from disease to health, right? So you can choose to consciously, continuously and consistently move towards health. And even when there, in the case of autoimmune condition, even when there is very slight elevation of antibodies, some people may have noticeable symptoms, but others may not, right? That's the key here. So you may not see symptoms at all. And yet both types of these people are on the spectrum, right? Each of us is unique, so our body behaves different ways. So this is why it does not matter whether you have symptoms or not. So if you have come to know that you have elevated antibodies in the case of autoimmune conditions, then they are moving you towards tissue degeneration. So again, sticking to the example of autoimmune diseases, because this is what I sort of work with, mostly women with autoimmune conditions, but also other chronic health issues, maybe thyroid, diabetes, pre-diabetes, etc., depression, headaches, they all are interlinked, of course. So because it starts with immune dysregulation, right? So the immune system starts responding more aggressively over a period of time, and then you have inflammation, then you have excess inflammation, which leads to tissue degeneration, then finally it leads to organ damage, which is when you get a disease diagnosis, right? So this is usually the way it travels. And again, continuing with the example of autoimmune diseases, but remember that it does not matter finally which disease diagnosis we are talking about. This is typically the way it works. So whether you have an autoimmune disease or not, or would like to prevent any kind of chronic health issues, including an autoimmune disease in the future, this part is really important to understand. So because these are the three main things that are at the root of immune dysregulation, which is food, crap food, of course. That means it doesn't give you nutrients. It looks like a toxin, which is typically the additives and the food colorings and the preservatives in processed foods, highly processed foods and junk foods. And it increases the stress levels. Also, it's a physiological stress, because if you're constantly having foods which your immune system thinks is alien, is foreign, or your body can't really break down, then it is a stressor for the body. And of course, toxins, it depletes the nutrients, increases the stress, and impairs metabolism and detoxification. So it's like a triple whammy. So not only that, it depletes the nutrients because your body is using up a lot of nutrients to handle and take out those toxins, but it also impairs detoxification. So it's like a catch-22 situation. And of course, stress. And again, when I'm talking about stress, I'm talking about chronic stress, because stress is natural, but we are not supposed to our bodies are not designed to be in a state of chronic stress, right? Stress every day. So it depletes nutrients, again, impairs digestion and impairs detoxification. So if you take all of these things together, then all of these challenges our immune system's ability to tolerate, right? So our immune system is supposed to be in a state of balance, in a state of tolerance, which is the green area, if you're watching it on the slide. But just understand that this is where in between is where our immune system is supposed to be majority of the time, which is a state of balance, like appropriately tolerate. So it's supposed to not think of everything that comes into the body as alien or foreign and start attacking it. Neither is it supposed to be so underreactive that it does not, sort of fight any germs or anything coming at all, which is what you are seeing, overreactive or underreactive. So for examples of underreactive immune reaction would be when there is an ongoing, major gut health issue going on, where the gut collection of microbes in the gut is severely disbalanced, and it's called dysbiosis. And like, for example, and then it can also be a, chronic UTI or chronic yeast infection, which is typically when the immune system is underreactive. And if there is a severe infection, then it can also be, hepatitis, which is in the liver, and some other kind of diseases. It can also, so this is examples of underreactive immune system. Then you have overreactive immune system, which you have allergies, where you have asthma, itchiness, eczema. These are all examples of overreactive immune response, because immune system is reacting to almost everything that is there, that's coming in contact with your body. And then, of course, at the far end of that spectrum lies autoimmune disorders, right? So the way I want you to start thinking about your immune system is, in your symptoms, is in terms of a gift. In fact, in functional medicine, we often say that a headache is a blessing, right? Why is that? Because it forces you to take notice and do something to address the problem. Right? Now that you have understood that there may or may not be symptoms, but they can still be very minimal, kind of niggling kind of symptoms, which you may have never thought that were actually a problem. But at the end of the day, they are a gift, which is why we say that a headache is a gift, for that matter. So your recurring symptoms like fatigue, bloating, indigestion, lack of energy, memory lapses, concentration issues. You may not think that, poor quality of sleep, you may not think that these are something to really be bothered about, or, many of us actually attempt to medicate it away. But these are all sort of indications that there is something going on underneath, right? And you don't have to wait for it to become bigger and bigger problems, as you could make out from, what I've been talking about. But you can start doing something today to stem that, to put out these small fires, that it doesn't become a huge one in the future. So this could be messengers. These are all messengers from the immune system letting you know that something's out of balance, right? So if in my daughter's case, like the story that I was telling you about, where she hardly had any symptoms for the first so many years, till she was about 6.5, 7. But I'm sure if I had known what to look out for, there would have been small things which would have seemed out of balance, but I wasn't aware of that. So many, this was, I'm talking about 2007, 8, 9, 10, right? Many years ago. So, and then that would have told me that something is out of balance and has to be addressed. And if I had, but again, coming back to the present, if you know that something is out of balance, then you can actually start addressing it, right? So this is what I want you to take from this presentation. This is only is to understand your symptoms. If you're having any kind of symptoms at all, it is a gift, right? But what if you already have a diagnosis, right? So what if there is you're already having health issues? What if you already have an autoimmune diagnosis or some such severe chronic disease? So what you can start doing is first prioritize and simplify the health creation process. Now that you've understood that even in the case of something so severe as an autoimmune condition, you're on the spectrum with vibrant health at one end and degenerative disease on the other side, you still can move towards vibrant health. You have to learn how to prioritize and simplify. So you have to learn to take what is the first step, then the second step, then the third step. In fact, this is what I do with my coaching clients in my 6 months coaching program. And I'm going to share, and you can sort of get in touch with me regarding that to know more. But coming back to this, you need to first understand what you need to prioritize, right? And once you are able to do that, then you can start working on that to, as I said, to move towards health. So a focused step-by-step approach is key to creating long-term health without becoming overwhelmed, I might add. And the other thing is to pay attention to your body without judgment, right? Many of us are so disconnected with our bodies, and I'm not going to get into all the details here. We are so disconnected, and we are not like this when we are very small, babies, young children. If you pay attention, if you observe them, they are completely in tune with what their bodies are. They will stop eating when they are full. But as we grow older, our society conditions us as women, even more so, how to, become more and more, we become more and more disconnected. So we stop paying attention to what our body is trying to tell us. And hence we are not able to tap into our body, what our body truly needs to heal, right? What kind of support we can give our body, whether it's in terms of nutrition, whether it's in terms of sleep, whether it's in terms of lifestyle changes, can be many different things, right? And all kinds of stuff, maybe more movement. So if you have a diagnosis, this is where you can start, right? And again, coming back to the same thing, that you don't need to wait for an exact diagnosis. You don't even need to wait for any symptoms for that matter. And you certainly don't need to wait for an exact diagnosis, because sometimes some of these diseases are very hard to diagnose because there's so many things at play. I'm again not going to get into that today, but just know that sometimes it takes years, especially in the case of autoimmune conditions. Sometimes it takes years and decades for disease to get diagnosed. And in the meantime, the tissue degeneration continues, the organ damage continues, so the damage continues. That doesn't stop because of a lack of diagnosis. So that is why this is so important, that you understand that you don't need to wait for that to happen. So again, if you're watching this on replay or if you're hearing this on audio, head over to our Facebook group. It's called Healing from Within with Anindita, and drop in your questions below. If you have any questions for me, I will address it in the next session. Or if you have any comments that you want to share, make sure that you drop inside the Facebook group. So the foundations of good health does not depend on your disease diagnosis, right? So these are three things that I want to leave you with, that you can still lay the foundations of good health, no matter, whether you're diagnosed with any disease or you would like to prevent one in the future, or you're somewhere in between. It doesn't matter. So whether it's putting in place a proper sleep hygiene, eating hygiene, you're sort of focusing on the right food, because only when we talk about diet, we only focus on the kind of foods we eat, but how we eat and where we eat, and what kind of, are we very stressed when we eat? All these things have a huge impact on our digestion. And in fact, this is again something that we work on right at the beginning. This is one of the first modules that I work on with my coaching clients, because I have women, I work with women with autoimmune conditions primarily, but with also other health conditions. So this is a key area, because without laying a good foundation, you cannot really, move forward. If you would like to know, you can just drop me send me a private message. as to how to work with me. So laying the foundations is key, and it does not depend on what diagnosis you have or you don't have or you would like to prevent. You can always start where you are with what you know about your health issues right now. So while you're trying to figure out which areas to prioritize, what to simplify and how, and what are the steps to get started. So for example, if you are dealing with, again, an autoimmune condition and you know that you need to work on your gut health, but you're not sure where to start, you can start by maybe reading up a bit about it. Maybe you can watch the Facebook Live that I have been doing on my Facebook page. I share write a lot of blogs on this. You can read other, books. There are many really good books out there. So you can sort of start arming yourself with the knowledge, and you can start tuning into your own body. I think that's a huge thing. And just get more focused on what your body is trying to tell you, more aware of all the messages that it's constantly sending you, right? So you don't have to wait for somebody else to give you permission to do that. And of course, you can always get better at a physical, emotional, spiritual level, because healing is an inside job. And that's why I always talk about healing. And my program is called Healing from Within, because cure may or may not be possible for a chronic condition, right? We may not always get cured where the disease does not exist anymore. But you can certainly heal at a physical, emotional, spiritual level, irrespective of what health issue or what disease diagnosis you have. And whether it's with the form of meditation, whether it's in the form of good nutrition, whether it's in the and it's a form, so it doesn't matter. There's so many ways, there's so many options that you have and opportunities that you have to start healing from within, whether it's your mindset, the thought process. In fact, this is one area, self-care practices. These are all the areas that I touch upon because they're so important to help you lay the foundation of long-term health. And finally, healing is an art. It takes time, it takes practice, and it takes love.